All right, my pal Kevin Warsh writes in the Wall Street Journal, the Fed can't pin inflation on Trump. That was a great piece he had in the Wall Street Journal. Former Federal Reserve governor and man about town and man about Wall Street. They are trying to, I mean, you read Tim Reyes and all these guys, mouthpieces of the Fed. You read a lot about that. They care more about tariffs at the moment than they do about inflation or interest rates or anything else. Mr. Trump has something to say about that, but let's start with that. They're obsessing about tariffs, Kevin.
So it's a good way to dodge a little responsibility. Inflation surged long before the president came into office and the rest. So they first said it was because of the war in Europe. Then they said it was because of supply chains and COVID. But inflation is still a huge regressive tax on the American people. So there's a new contrivance going about Washington and some in New York, which is the president's threatened tariffs. That's the source of inflation. They don't seem to put the same emphasis on the spending cuts that you and I think are real and are coming. They don't seem to spend as much time and attention on the deregulation. These are hugely disinflationary forces. I think the other big news of yesterday wasn't just what the Fed said, where they're talking about tariffs, but what the president said. The president seems like he's ready to take matters into his own hands. He seemed more troubled by inflation than the central bank, whose job it is to deal with high prices.
That is a great point. Can we stop there? That's a wonderful point. Because so many media outlets misreported it. They're saying he was furious at the Fed for not cutting interest rates. That is not true. In fact, if you read his Truth Social, he didn't mention interest rates. What he did was he said what you just said. He said Jay Powell and the Fed failed to stop the problem they created with inflation. And he said, I'll do it by unleashing American energy production, slashing regulation, rebalancing trade, and reigniting manufacturing. The Treasury is going to lead the effort to cut unnecessary regulation. He said, if the Fed has spent less time on DEI, gender ideology, green energy, and fake climate change, inflation would never have been a problem. I mean, that's what you're right. He's more concerned not about slashing interest rates, about getting inflation down. It's fantastic. And the Fed.
You got that right, brother Kudlow.
It's like, I didn't know, the media will not report this.
So the normal Washington blame game is to say it's the other guy. I thought the most impressive thing what the president did yesterday, he said, blame me. I'm going to fix this. I can't afford to wait around for them. I think the president knows that inflation did a lot of harm to the economy of his predecessor. If the Fed won't act, he will. And so that's an impetus for the cutting and spending, the deregulatory moves. And he's taking responsibility. He's been in the job 10 days, and I think it's a pretty impressive run.
You know, he has a model. It's very interesting. We're not going to agree with it 100%, but he has what I call an oil-centric model of inflation. Now, there's a lot of truth to it because oil permeates the economy. I mean, hundreds of consumer goods from oil prices. And then he said, and then he gave that Davos speech, he kind of fingered the Saudis. I mean, it's going to take a while for Trump's energy deregulation to take hold. But the Saudis could increase production if they wanted to. They've been holding back. They got plenty of room. That would get prices down, would hurt Russia, right? And would also help the United States.
That's right. I mean, if oil prices went from $75 to 55 or 60 bucks, still think there'd be a lot of incentive for American producers to drill, baby, drill. I still think supply would come online. The thing the president's responsible for that central bankers aren't is geopolitics. Getting the Saudis to provide more supply, and they do have an excess of capacity, does good things for energy markets, could lower prices for American consumers, and might also be part of a deal that brings the Saudis, the Israelis, and others to a peace in the Middle East, which has another huge benefit for the global economy.
Yeah, it would hurt Iranian production. We've got to put more sanctions on it.
It would hurt a lot of our adversaries.
But you write in your Wall Street Journal article, importantly, the Fed really obviously Biden had too much government spending, but unfortunately the Fed, quote, monetized it. They put the printing presses on over time. And your point, there's still too much money out there. There's too much money chasing too few goods. There still is at this late date. And so here's the Fed cutting interest rates and pumping more money into the economy. How's that get inflation down?
So it doesn't. You know, they, I think, have a view, the economics profession broadly, that inflation comes if workers get paid too much or the economy's too hot. I'm afraid those theories are wrong. The president's theory, which he puts in his own words, that you and I would support is inflation comes when the government spends too much and prints too much. And for all the preoccupation in the press and on Wall Street about what will interest rates be, if the Fed could drain money from its balance sheet, shrink the size of the Federal Reserve's imprimatur, take that money out, interest rates could be lower. The real economy could be stronger. But if you don't have the right objectives, the right tools, then I'm afraid we're going to live in a world where inflation is too high and it continues to be a real burden for the American working class.
You know, to go back to quoting President Trump in his Truth Social, what is the Fed doing? I mean, DEI, gender ideology, green energy, fake climate change. They flirted with all that in those 4 years. It's only maybe the last few weeks that Jay Powell's running away. I mean, I think what Trump did here was nail them, just nailed them.
So
he's going to make big changes in that institution when he can.
Yeah, the remit doesn't seem to mention any of those things. The remit that Congress gave to the Fed said price stability and maximum sustainable employment. Those other things might be virtues or vices, but it's not their job. And a little more focus on their day job, and we wouldn't be having this kind of turmoil that's happening in prices in the U.S. and among our big trading partners. I think if they focus on job number one, getting prices down, it would be good. I was surprised again yesterday. The Fed didn't seem all that unnerved that inflation was closer to 3% than 2%. The only person who seemed really angry about it was the President of the United States.
You're right. By the way, the GDP report came out today. Rather disappointing, 2.3%. We can do a lot better than that. Scott Bessent wants 3% plus, and I think he's right, the new Treasury man. But your point, the PCE, the core PCE deflator, 2.8. The Fed's target is 2.0. They don't seem to ever talk about that. They're still running. Other measures are even worse. They're yelling at me to get out. It's just great to talk to you. You know what? We need changes at the Fed. That's what we need.
A regime change in economic policy across institutions in government, and the Fed should be a part of that.
Absolutely, 100%. Kevin Warsh, the best. Thanks ever so much for coming on.